There we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the August the 12th installment of the Flux Dev Meeting. Just a bit of housekeeping before we get started. We do abide by a code of conduct, so just in short, just be excellent to each other. You know, we're all friendly faces here. If you could add yourself into the attendees under the meeting notes, that would be awesome too. And without further ado, we can get right into the topic. So also, if you've got a topic or something you'd like to chat about, just feel free to just tack it on to the end while we're going along. So first on the agenda, I've got 2 points here. So there's just like one part of the docs, the Helm chart spec examples and the source components part of the docs. And I just wanted like a bit of clarification around like, for instance, how would you use that? Because when I've used like Helm release and stuff like that before, it's I usually like I've never directly touched a Helm chart object in a YAML. So I just kind of want to understand like the use case of like when you would edit a Helm chart in YAML to pull a specific chart version every 5 minutes or pull the latest chart version every 10 minutes. Like, you know, like how would that fit in like with guides and stuff? Yeah.
Are you asking about, just a quick question, are you asking about like thoughts on that or thoughts on like the use cases, or are you asking primarily about thoughts about guide, like, or where it would fit into the guide?
Like I'm asking for like how when would someone need to edit a chart.yaml or a Helm chart source object directly? Like yeah, that's and would they edit this source directly or would they edit the nested spec in the Helm release? I think that, yeah.
Oh, got it. If I'm right, I believe the Helm chart is implicitly created, and people don't. There's not. There's not a. There's not really a thought that folks are creating the Helm chart custom, custom resources themselves, but that they create the Helm release, and that creates the nested objects. Does
Yeah.
anyone else have more information about that? Because for me, that's pretty much as far as I know.
I can give some details. So the Helm chart is like a pod to a deployment. Inside the deployment, you specify how you want your pod to be created, but you don't create it yourself. The controller does it. In a Helm release, you tell the controller which chart from which repository you want to use, and the controller will create the Helm chart object for you. It's there, you can inspect it, you can see errors, you can see it's more about for observability in the same way as a pod is. A pod is immutable, right? You cannot change directly a pod of a deployment. You have to change the deployment spec. In the same way now, if you want to change something in your Helm release, let's say you want to swap the values.yaml default with a different file, values minus production.yaml or whatever, you don't change the Helm chart directly. You change the Helm release, you specify, hey, I want this new default to be used. And once you apply that, the Helm chart will be automatically recreated. Yeah, the tar will be automatically recreated. The actual chart will be rebundled by source controller in this case.
Okay. That's what I figured. Yeah, because I'm like, every time like I think I've done it like once where I've like directly made like a Helm chart source, and I'm like, oh, this is not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to make the Helm release and you point the Helm release as the source and all that. Yeah. So like I was just going through this part of the docs where there's these spec examples about pulling a specific chart version every 5 minutes and doing all these things. I was just like, oh, wait, it says I can do this stuff, but should I do this stuff like in these spec examples? Like, is this better suited in like a configuring how release kind of things? Like, can you configure like the poll rate in a Helm release? Like, how's this? Yeah.
There are many
Sorry.
intervals. There are three of them. One is, so on the Helm repository itself, you set an interval. What that means, at which interval you want to pull the Helm repository index file. Then there is an interval for the Helm chart, which tells the controller at which interval to check if there is a new Helm chart to be composed. And there is the Helm release interval, which tells the Helm controller at which interval to try to upgrade the Helm chart, the Helm release. So there are three intervals that are doing different things. But mostly for, let's say, end users, they should be concerned only with the Helm repository interval, right? If you want to react faster to new Helm chart releases, that's where you need to set up a lower interval, or set up a webhook that tells source controller, hey, there is a new chart release, go fetch the index for me. And because all the other controllers are listening to events, when source controller pulls a new index, it detects, oh, there is a new chart version. We already have a chart. It should be upgraded to this new version, and it creates a new chart, Helm chart object. Well, it updates the current Helm chart object to its new version. Then Helm controller is notified by that event, oh, there is a new chart for me, and it does the upgrade on its own. So the Helm repository interval is the one that makes upgrades and detection of new releases faster or not.
I have a quick question about that. So if you have a chart repository that has, maybe 100 charts in it, and source controller is checking the chart repository every so often and pulling down the index file, and it sees that there's a new chart, a version of a chart in there, how does it know that the Helm controller is interested in that chart? Does it just notify Helm controller, hey, I have a new version of some chart, and then Helm controller has to go and decide whether it wants that chart, or does the source controller know which charts the Helm controller is interested in and only notify them when one of those charts changes?
So Helm charts are not managed by Helm controller, are managed by source controller.
Right.
Source controller creates these tars, downloads the tars, maybe it modifies it, and then it exposes it. So basically, every time we have a new index version, we know that source controller knows that something changed in the Helm repository, right? Then it notifies the Helm chart controller. The Helm chart controller says, hey, let me look if I have a new version for this chart. If it does, it downloads it, and then it emits an event. Then Helm controller says, oh, for that Helm release that it's using that Helm chart, there is a new version, and it acts on it and upgrades it.
Right. Yeah, I was wondering.
So the source controller,
yeah.
Sorry to cut in, the source controller just creates a Helm chart for every chart that's in the repository?
No, of course not.
Okay, what does it do then?
What?
What does it do then?
Well,
Only those invoked by a Helm release, right?
well, no, not the release.
okay, so
what
it's
Stefan's
coupled.
saying is there are three different types of CRDs that source controller defines. A Helm repo, a Git repository with a path and everything, and a bucket spec. So if you have and Stefan, correct me if I'm wrong, but since we're talking about a Helm repo right now, or if we're talking about a chart that's somewhere like in a file folder inside of, just in Git, right? If we have a CRD that defines one of or in a bucket, right? If we have a CRD that it can define a range of a Semver range, it can define a specific version, etc. It won't just download everything that happens to be in there. It just downloads whatever that CRD defines.
But hang on, but wait a second. I'm paraphrasing, I think, Sebastian, his question, which is, how does the source controller know which charts out of the repository, which has hundreds of them probably, or thousands if it's the
Potentially.
old centralized one? How does it know
Oh, I
which
see.
ones to create Helm charts from? And the answer is that it is coupled to the Helm controller. It goes and looks for the Helm releases and sees which ones are used and then creates Helm charts for those. Correct?
No, it sounds like that's not what's happening.
No, I don't think so. I think it's decoupled,
How
right?
does
I
it
mean,
know then?
It doesn't. It sounds like Stefan said, now correct me if I'm wrong, Stefan, if I'm misrepresenting. It sounds like Stefan said, it downloads the index for the repository. It downloads the charts. And then it tells the Helm controller, it will notify the Helm controller, there's an update to this repository. Helm controller then has to check if the actual charts that it's watching or whatever have been changed, or if it's just other stuff in the repository, right?
No,
Is that not the
I-
case?
I gotta let Stefan explain first.
Yeah, and part of this is
Check my thoughts on here.
I'm trying to update understanding so that
Yeah.
right, this interplay is clear.
so you create an object called Helm repository. Let's take this example without Git repos or anything else. Like create a Helm repository object. Source controller will, from that moment on, will create an artifact inside the cluster that contains the index.yaml placed on that repository, which has not the chart itself, but a list of all the charts that are there and their versions. Then you create a Helm release, which embeds a chart template, a Helm chart template. And with that, Helm controller creates a Helm chart object inside the cluster. It creates it. So you don't create it on your own. Then source controller adds that Helm chart to its reconciliation. And what it does, it looks at the Helm chart and says, oh, this Helm chart definition uses this Helm repository. Which version should I take? If it's a fixed version in the Helm chart, it will go and download that. If it's a, let's say, get me latest, there is no version there, so it will take the latest version. It looks at the index file, it loads the index file in memory, chooses the latest version of that chart, and only then downloads the chart from the cluster. Now, when an updates happen, you push something to your Helm repository, the source controller, based on the Helm repository definition interval, will download the new index file. Then it notifies the other part of source controller, which takes care of Helm charts. It notifies only those Helm charts that are using that Helm repository. Hey, there is an update to the Helm repository. Check out the new index, rerun your version range, and see if you have something new. If there is something new, then the source controller will reconcile that particular Helm chart and will pull down the new version. Once it's done that, it issues an event. Then Helm controller catches that event and says, oh, there is a new version of my Helm chart. I have to upgrade the release, and it does the upgrade, right? So we never download all the charts from a repository. We only download the desired version of the chart, which is specified in a Helm chart object based on the Helm release template.
That's great. I was hoping that it worked in a similar way to that. I was a little worried that the source controller would pull like the index and then notify the Helm controller, hey, something has changed in the repository for one of your charts, right? And then the Helm controller would have to go and then figure out, do I need the chart or whatever? So this sounds,
Also,
what you're doing, it sounds much more efficient.
we have this separation of concerns.
Yeah.
Source controller is the one that reaches out outside the cluster. Helm controller and customized controller should never do that. They don't go and download assets from outside. They are using the source controller cache to acquire those artifacts and act on them. Customized controller will do a customized build and a kubectl apply. Helm controller will do a Helm install or Helm upgrade.
So is that, you mentioned a Helm chart resource that gets created as a consequence of the Helm
Release.
right? the Helm chart resource, is that a separate object in the Kube API? Should I be able to query Kube API for Helm chart?
Yeah, if you do, for example, if you run Flux trace, the trace command for a Helm chart, that trace command will say, hey, here is the Helm release, here is the Helm chart and its version, and here is the Helm repository from which that chart comes from. So there are like 3 different objects in etcd.
Cool.
Now there is a discussion ongoing on. So there are some people that are saying, I want to reuse the Helm chart. Let's say I have 10 namespaces. In all these namespaces, I'm installing, let's say, Redis. And Redis is the same everywhere, the same version, the same chart version. Now, you cannot do that. You have to create 10 Helm releases in those 10 namespaces. And each Helm release will create a Helm chart. So we are caching inside source controller 10 times the same Helm chart of Redis, let's say version 5.0.0. Right. And some users say, hey, I want to create manually the Helm chart, Redis 5.0.0, then in my Helm release definition, I don't want to specify there the chart template. I want to reference an existing chart from a different namespace, from Flux system, for example, because I want to reuse it. I don't want to download it 10 times. I don't want to be notified 10 times and so on. And this is something that Hide is considering, allowing people to switch the template with a reference. So you could also create this manually. But yet again, cross namespaces references between all this stuff. So it's also about multi-tenancy, security, and so on. So it's not that easy, but now we are working on allowing cluster admins or source owners. I'm the owner of image of Helm repository. I've created this object. And when I'm creating this object, let's say in the next version of Flux, you'll be able to define which other namespaces are allowed to use your source. So let's say a cluster admin creates a Helm repository object and it says, I allow all namespaces to use this, let's say, the Binami repository. I don't want people to download the index file of Binami, which is like 50 megabytes or something, in each of their namespaces. And in the same way, we are looking at allowing people to share Helm charts and say, I'm defining the Redis Helm chart, latest stable version in my in Flux system or in another namespace. Then I'm sharing this chart with everyone on the cluster or with some particular tenants on the cluster so they can reuse it. And what this means in the end is paying less for networking. You know, the biggest cost in, let's say, AWS is egress, right? Every time you reach out to, I don't know, GitHub or whatever are those charts located, you are paying a lot of money for that traffic because it's egress, right? So people want to trim down all this traffic that we generate every time we fetch a chart and so on.
Yeah, so is there a proposal to make the Helm chart object a cluster scoped object, or they keeping it namespace scoped and then just explicitly sharing it with more than one namespace? Explicitly
sharing, because so we also had this discussion about cluster objects. Most things that you want to share, like a Git repo, an image repository, a Helm repository, whatever, they have attached authentication to it. You have a secret, and the secret is not a cluster object, it's a namespace object. So even if we create, let's say, a cluster Git repository, it still has to reference a namespace to fetch the secret. So you don't actually solve the problem. You just create this thing, which is global, which in fact needs a namespace and has to access the secret from the namespace. So instead of doing that, we leave the resources as they are, namespaced, but we allow people to define this access control list where I say, hey, those tenants in my cluster are allowed to use my source or not. It's more about when you don't trust your tenants, right? you want to have that restriction. If, I don't know, the tenants are teams within your organization, you'll probably want to share everything with them. So, you know, to reduce cost of egress. But if the tenants are not trustworthy, then maybe you want to limit which things you want to share with them. For me, it makes zero sense to have a public Helm repository like the Binami one not shared and make everyone download 15 megabytes every minute. Like,
Right.
imagine the cost. You'll end up with thousands and thousands of I don't know, US dollars paid by month just because you download that file in every single namespace. And if you have like hundreds of namespaces, you can see how that cost can blow up incredibly.
Yes.
So that's
I can
the
tell you
idea.
that from personal experience, the platform team that runs the clusters, and usually even the cluster operating team within like the same business unit, they almost never trust the application teams. They treat the application teams with a zero, or at least as little as possible trust as they can get away with. And
yeah, but they also want to reduce the
Really
cost of a cluster.
Yeah. I mean, nobody wants to download the same repo 15 times. That's an excellent point. Even the same chart 15 times. So like,
yeah, we don't allow chart usage right now. So you have to download that chart 50 times. We think about how we can allow people to say, instead of chart, inside the Helm release, now you have chart, and you have to specify the chart template. Instead of chart, you'll be able to say chart ref, and you'll reference the chart by name and namespace. And that's how you don't download all these things. Like the same way you reference today Git repositories or anything.
But the chart object will reference the same repository, right? So if you have 3 copies of the same chart, and let's just assume for sake of argument that the same version, could the source controller disintermediate and say, okay, there are 3 different versions of this chart in different namespaces. They're all referring to the same source, right? Maybe they're different versions, or maybe they're the same, or maybe they're within the same range. Like, can it determine whether it needs to store more than 1 copy of that chart just by looking at where it comes from?
I gotta just bookmark this for a second, because we can come back to this, but we want to get through all these other topics in here, so like everyone has like a chance. No, it's okay.
Really
it's okay.
interesting. Yeah,
like it's really interesting. Like I just want to make sure that everyone gets like their chance to share what they need to. So another one from me, we've got Lfx Mentoring Program. It started or upcoming. I got an email about it, and I thought I'd share it with the group. This is a good opportunity for us to get a small kind of project or something done by like an intern, like a 12-week program or something. Yes, there's the overhead of like you gotta teach and train, but it's also like a route to potential new contributor. So like I need to probably open an issue polling for thoughts or any ideas, but what is everyone's feelings on that? Feelings and cool and stuff like that. Okay.
I'm sorry, Allison, would you repeat that?
Okay, it's all right.
General feelings, I think mentoring is wonderful. I want to mentor. Yeah. I want to mentor too. I feel like I need to mentor myself most of the time.
Yeah, I think this kind of branches into like the wider thing of like us having like a kind of contributorship program thing. And I'll probably file an issue about that to more cohesively state the thought and like verbalize it. But I'm just kind of bringing it up here now.
Is that through the CNCF?
Yeah, it's the CNCF, the new community, the replacement for Community Bridge. It's Lfx Mentoring. Pretty cool.
Never. You don't need to repeat it, Allison. I just reread the second. I just got pinged right when you were talking.
Oh, no worries.
Sorry about that. Interesting. What are there certain areas of mentoring that this program is mostly interested in?
So there's the mentorship.lfx.linuxfoundation.org site where it's got like all these different projects and all that. Where is it? All mentorships. And so there's things like Vitesse, Tremor, Kubernetes, like lots of different things. So you can kind of get a gauge of like what a suitable project would be, like based on, you know, some of them got applications closed, some of them applications open. I have to like, yeah, some have got applications open.
Who is it that comes up with the particular project? Is it a collaboration, or is it the, would it be the Flux team that comes up with a proposal for a project and then it gets matched to a person? Or
yeah, the answer to that would be it's probably the Flux team like works to like, make, proposal that seems reasonably scoped. There's a doc section about the whole deal, where it's got like an overview of like the platform and the program schedules and all that. The mentorship available on July. Yeah.
We tried this 2 years ago and we gave up because mentorship is hard. It takes half of your day of work and we couldn't do it. No one was prepared to give up that amount of time and invest into mentorship. I don't know if things changed, definitely not with me, but if anyone here wants to volunteer.
Yeah, what's the expected time commitment? Has that changed?
How's that changed?
From the time Stefan was talking about. I guess I could actually click these links and do that work myself.
Yeah, I haven't like fully like read through all the things, of just kind of verbalizing and sharing this stuff with the group. I also
Yeah, I'm reading over it now too. I just have a couple of quick thoughts that relates to what Stefan just mentioned. Good point, first of all. And it's good to share that experience. We have 3 different areas, I think, that where we could use help in general, whether we're talking about mentees or just additional contributors. One is docs, and I think Allison, you and Tomo and I, a while back, put together a proposal for a very specific proposal for where we could get some doc help. But that was specifically for a program to help with documentation. So, but at least we have that all kind of shovel ready. If there are folks that are ready to do that kind of thing, I don't know if this is the right.
Yeah, I don't think it's the right kind of, because this is kind of internship, like mentorship, and throwing someone who's doing an internship onto docs is I think not the most ideal thing. But if we don't have like the capacity like for a full-on mentoring program, like maybe like it's August now, October's coming up in a couple months, so just having a bunch of like easy wins for people to like dip their toes in for Hacktoberfest, which hopefully this year will not be as chaotic. I'll be
Do you mind if I just finish that one thing? So there are, I mean, that makes sense, and thank you. Basically, I just wanted to note that as one of the 3 areas, and that there was some work done, whether or not that's applicable or we could actually use that here. At least it's kind of there for this or similar things, if there are people that like really specifically want to work on documentation, because that is one good way for people to get led into something, even if they don't have a background in some of the areas, where they would need to know more. I'm not saying that's the best one, but just that's one of the 3 areas. I think the other 2 are, we already have 2 initiatives going to help broaden contributorship, the bug scrub and this controller collaboration. I think that like already they're both very open, and there's already some armature to help bring new people in. So for the bug scrub, I think Kingdom has a very good, and whoever else is helping with it has a very good strategy for bringing new people in a way that wouldn't take all of his time or all of our time, but is already in motion. And I was thinking the controller collab is very similar, where we're putting a lot of work into helping guide people into knowing what the prerequisites are to study on their own, how to then get involved, and just kind of leading them step by step into contributing. So at least potentially we could do that without really changing our program very much. That's just my only thoughts about it.
Is this a technical an internship, is a technical mentorship, or is it process related, or do you not, or it could be either, or?
It's up to how you specify what you need. Like,
Do we get to select our mentees from a pool, or?
I believe that's how. I'm not too 100% sure. So probably, yeah. Have a read over those docs and we can kind of revisit it as a group.
Kingdon, I don't want to put you on the spot. You were talking about changelog automation in one of the more recent bug scrub meetings. Do you think that might be something that would lend itself to
Changelog automation? We have a fair amount of that already. I mean, there are lots of things that a new person could help with. The best thing that would be if we had an interested mentee who actually has used Flux, at least, who knows enough about Flux that they wouldn't be coming in completely cold. You know, the type of people that we have showing up at our bug scrubs, where they either come from having already used Flux v1 or they're experimenting with Flux v2. I haven't looked at the program at all, so I don't know what it's about.
I post some links in the chat. Yeah, do have a read through, and yeah, can probably do some offline collaboration over this through GitHub and Slack. Start a GitHub discussion, yeah. So I don't want to take up too much time. So we'll move on to Scott now.
Okay, let me get to these notes here. Well, I can be quite short about this. I actually introduced it just slightly then in the context of your other question. Basically, I just wanted to give an update on how that controller collaboration is going. Pretty good, in the sense that there are a number of other engineers who have a much better understanding of how Flux controllers work. Right now, they're largely people that we already have a working relationship with through the same company, but it definitely does not have to be that way. This is an open project, and anyone who's interested in coming to better understand how to get involved in maintaining or contributing to even Flux controllers, or even writing their own, this would be very beneficial to them. So I think one of my goals is to mention it on the public call, so that anybody who's listening who we haven't already collaborated with or invited to collaborate with can reach out and say, hey, I'd like to learn how to do that. Please do. For right now, the best way to do that is to probably ping me, I think, on the CNCF Flux contributors Slack channel. I'm guessing that would be the best way. Any of the maintainers also know about this and could point people to the right issues. But I've dedicated some time to this, so and part of the goal is to take pressure off of people who have largely been maintaining this almost entirely on their own, a very, very small group of people. So I would rather people ping me as opposed to pinging the other maintainers for now, just because then that would kind of go against that goal. If they felt like they were getting more pressure to now help other people understand how to do this when they're really just trying to focus on what they were already trying to do. So yeah, so please just ping me, Scott Rigby, for now. I know Kingdon's expressed interest in helping with this too, and I believe Allison has as well. So just the most important thing is that we need to there's a list of prerequisites for learning, almost a curriculum, and we need to get that out public somewhere. But I just wanted to at least note it, say this is happening, and please just be in contact about it if anyone's interested.
Scott, I'm porting the image controllers to new package runtime. Should I leave that for someone else?
I would say no, because the goal is not to, we don't want to make this take longer. In fact, even if the work was all done right now for all of the Flux controllers, that would be perfectly fine. There would still be a lot of learning. There would still be a lot of value for people learning. They may not be able to pitch in on those little pieces, or sorry, those big or little pieces, but there is always room to improve the controllers, and the more people understand how they work under the hood, and just understand controller runtime and understand how kstatus works and understand specifically how conditions work, because that's just not very well documented out there. It is a little bit, but it's just not, it's not consolidated all in one place. And I think a lot of the learning that Flux maintainers have done around actually implementing controller runtime, it's a very good example of showing how someone can get value out of using controller runtime, and especially conditions. So.
Okay, cool. So the other thing to mention about that is, having done that rewrite, I can probably help with documentation and stuff. So just keep that in mind.
Thank you. That would be awesome. I guess I just haven't wanted to lean too much on you or Stefan or Hida specifically, because you already have been like very overworked. And the goal of this is to try to get more people to help out more, including myself. I'm just trying to like scale it a bit, so it's not just simply one other pitching in of helping. It's also like there's a community scaling up. But thank
fan
you.
out. Yep, that's cool.
Fanning
No, I
out,
don't.
yeah.
Yeah.
Your
That's
insight
cool.
would be really appreciated anytime you feel like you have the time and it's not stressing you out more.
Cool. Well, I did note that there's sort of two further stages of kind of writing docs, so I can help out with that, either the writing
I'll paste
or
the link
looking at it.
to that stage list right now in the chat, so that everyone knows what Michael's talking about.
Yeah, good idea.
Thank
Cool.
you. Yeah, that would be great. There's a lot more I could say, Allison, about this. I just don't want to take up more time. I just wanted to make a note, and because it's really more for people who are already interested. And if they're already interested, there's going to be some, I think, self direction here. And so I think that the next goal for self direction is, yes, follow the link that I'm going to post in the chat right now. I'll post it also in the docs. Sorry, not the docs. The meeting notes, and then just reach out to us. So it will require a little self-motivation, but it won't require as much of folks as it used to, because we can actually help direct people in a more like step-by-step way.
Alrighty, thank you for that, Scott. Appreciate. Next up, we have Kingdon.
Just want to give a quick Flux V1 and Helm operator update. The Flux V1 repo, I think now we can say officially, is under control. There's less than 1 page of open issues and less than 1 page of open PRs, and all of the PRs are fresh and reasonable to consider for merging. So I would like to get some time from one or more of the maintainers, although I'm now also a maintainer of Flux, which I'm very happy to announce. As far as release stats, for a long time, so back up before we talk about the statistics and why this is important, there is a PR to fix a bug in Helm operator, and I have a question about whether we can still consider it for merge or not. It is a chart bug with in terms of quoting, and it may be even a breaking change. So my initial inclination was to not consider it for merge, but it is a bug. The issue itself is linked if anyone wants to take a look at it. The short version is, if you have any special characters in your password, then you need to do a weird crazy workaround in your chart values. So someone submitted a really simple PR to fix this, and I think it would be a breaking change. And officially, the status of Helm operator is superseded according to the migration timetable. But this person couldn't be here today, really wanted to have this merged and hope that there would be another release of Helm operator. So the statistics of Helm operator, for a long time, there were a lot of features merged, but no releases. And within the past 2 months, we have had 2 Helm operator releases back to back within a couple of days of each other. I was not planning to go all out and try to merge a bunch of things from the Helm operator PR, but this one is a live one, so I thought I would bring it up since it seems moderately controversial, and the person really wanted to have it merged just to see what the disposition of the maintainers are. And unfortunately, he is not here, but maybe he can weigh in later. So that's all I have on this topic.
Alrighty.
We can revisit this next week if it's better when it is here. That would make sense to me. He's been the primary lead on Helm operator. So,
Kingdon, what was a specific ask for other maintainers?
The Flux V1 PR repos, I'm just going to need them either mass approved or there's only 10 or so. I think there's less than 10. And the good news is one of them is a proof that Flux V1 works with the latest Kubernetes release 1.22.0 that just came out last week, which we had planned to have ready at release time, and it shows that it is in fact ready. So the latest release, there's no urgency to put out another Flux release, in other words, because we're current on support for Kubernetes.
Oh, good. Okay. Cool.
Cool. Next we have Scott.
Thanks. It's real quick. I just forgot to ask Michael and Stefan earlier. And Hit is not here, so we can ask him later, but do you have any objections to me taking or granting me triage role so I can help with issues and so on? I've been fairly blocked from doing that. I've had to reach out to I've been having to reach out to Hita mainly lately because we're already talking about other things with this controller work, just to help do really basic things related to Flux issues.
Definitely no objection from me. Is there a kind of step on the contributor ladder that comes with that? I have a feeling that
it's project member. So like I'll paste a link in the chat here where it says you know, when you become a member, you have the triage role and you're already a maintainer. So I think like there is a bit of like bookkeeping work that we might actually need to do where we just go back through all our maintainers. So another thing we should actually do is like find a way to consolidate our maintainers file, like automate all the maintainers file into like one kind of directory in the community repo, have some automation on that. But I will file an issue for that, and we can look into that offline.
And the specific case, let's just follow through whatever we need to do to make Scott retrospectively a project member.
Right. Yeah. It's mainly just because we have like Allison's saying, we don't really have a lot of automation around our roles across the different repos. I think it's a little bit more, not necessarily challenging, but just more steps than it used to be, because now this is a much more distributed project. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott. Last up, we have the bug scrub updates from Kingdon.
So let me find, this week we had 6 participants at the Bug Scrub, number 6. Thanks everyone for holding it up while I was on vacation. I really appreciate it. Going together with the topic that was brought up earlier about interns or volunteers, or this is currently probably one of the best opportunities for people to get involved with Flux at an entry level. Barring the possibility that we adopt this internship program and get someone for a commitment for a length of time. The commitment is 1 hour only, and you can come and participate, and we'll discuss issues together. And I'm hoping that by the next Bug Scrub, Thursday of next week at 1 p.m. Eastern, I will have integrated the discussions so we can set aside a span of time to look through discussions as well. That's the Bug Scrub update for this week.
Thank you very much, Kingdon. Cool. That leads us right to the end of this meeting, where now we can kind of open floor chat about some things. If anyone has something they'd like to share.
Yeah, so I was making 30K part-time during.
That's a shame. Santoshi had to drop off. Actually, I was going to ask about if she's going to get back to the multi-tenancy stuff, but she's not here. So not that.
We decided to do the refactoring before any multi-tenancy work, so that's suspended indefinitely.
That's
Is there anything new and interesting on the graduation project?
On the what?
The whatever promotion and graduation to the next.
It means CNCF.
Yeah, next CNCF black belt level.
We are going to meet with the audit team next week. So that kicks that off. Security audit.
Yeah, that was one. And then also the, if I remember correctly, Stefan and Michael, when we had all met about this before in a past public call, the controller standards unification and end-to-end tests would make you feel much more comfortable with the GA or getting closer to the GA. Is that still? Are you still feeling that way? I mean, this is
that's
more like
GA, but that's different from graduating the project. Those are two different things.
Oh, I'm sorry, you were asking about graduation. My bad. This is what I said.
It's okay. Like
unrelated.
It's kind of natural to peg them together, but they are different things. Yeah.
My apologies. They're completely unrelated.
Yeah, no worries.
Wouldn't the graduation also sort of depend on the GA?
No.
No.
Oh, so the graduation has its own mechanism. We have to do a security audit, user interviews. We have to fill a bunch of documents and so on. That takes time. We kick off that let's say project internally. We are going to meet, as Michael said, with the team that will do the security audit for Flux 2 and all its controllers, libraries, everything. Yeah, GA is a parallel discussion. Don't link them together.
Yeah, apologies again for mixing that just now. Scratch that from the record, please.
Go down on your permanent record, Scott. Yeah, I was just reading a little bit about that process earlier this week, and I was surprised at how heavyweight, how complicated it is. Sort of like
there is no more step beyond graduation, so it has to be complicated. It has to be hard, right?
Yeah.
Mean something.
And one thing I think is good to mention is that, the Flux team has been very, very. I think the only reason that these two should be spoken about together is like the actual version and graduation is that the Flux team has been very, very. I don't want to say good, but like vigilant about uh, following Simver and and not only that, and API versioning, so that we can have a the community can have a very high level of trust in the Flux project. Um, any project could say I'm 1.0, 2.0, 5.0, etc. But you know, that comes with a cost of being able to maintain that and being able to stand behind saying yes, we make our work backwards compatible within these constraints. So I would just, if anybody's listening, I would encourage them to not focus too much on the actual version in the sense that there are major projects that are still major version 0 because they just take versioning very seriously.
I think the best example is Terraform, which went 1.0 after, I don't know, 5 years or how many years?
That's a good point. Yeah, no one's saying, hey, should we use Terraform? It's not 1.0 yet.
Yeah, there are many other projects like that. We are not special in any way. And we have a 1.0.
Yeah.
So if that's the issue with the graduation, we already have that.
Yeah.
All right, we're getting close to the top of the hour here, so I guess I'll cut the recording now. So ciao, recording.